The problem has gotten exponentially worse.
Downtown Seattle has been hit hard by the pandemic, with businesses pulling out and lawlessness moving in.
Things have to drastically change.
The city has shut down a problematic bus stop near 3rd and Pike for now, and added more police patrols. But will Operation New Day renew the vitality of downtown Seattle?
How long is it going to last?
And nearby neighborhoods are seeking relief from ongoing crime as well.
It didn't just disappear, it got pushed somewhere else.
Will the crowds return downtown this summer?
Seattle only works when we're working together.
Our panel weighs in.
This is not a new thing.
We need a comprehensive and sustained strategy.
Revitalizing a critical Seattle corridor. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. Mayor Bruce Harrell is acting on concerns about crime and drug use on 3rd Avenue in downtown Seattle and other neighborhoods with a program called Operation New Day. The plan involves adding police officers and social service workers to respond to hotspots of street disorder. It's an approach the city has used before, and while many Seattle residents welcome a renewed focus on public safety, the challenge of sustaining that focus will determine if this is a new day for Seattle or a repeat of old policies that have come up short.
Looking for some gelato, pastries, coffee?
Joe Dayap eagerly welcomes customers at Gelatiamo, an Italian cafe on 3rd and Union in downtown Seattle. But this operations manager is not so eager to relive the break-ins and thefts of the past 2 years. There was even a fire set right outside the cafe's front door.
Sales are down probably 70%.
Closed for 3 months due to the COVID pandemic and boarded up for 8 months in 2021. Gelatiamo is back open now 4 days a week, but Dayap is frustrated that he still has a view out his window of drug use, stolen goods trafficking, and other dangerous activities.
So as a businessman, I'm going, how can we continue a business that's viable for not only the clientele, but for my workers, to be safe and feel enjoyable to come here.
Things have to drastically change.
Cleaning up 3rd Avenue is part of a public safety effort Mayor Bruce Harrell is calling Operation New Day. After multiple shootings on 3rd at the end of February and beginning of March, and 2 deaths within days of each other, Harrell has increased police patrols in the area and promises more outreach from social workers to respond to street disorder.
We know that it didn't just disappear, it got pushed somewhere else.
Jamie Lee is Director of Community Initiatives at SCIDpda, the Seattle Chinatown International District Preservation Development Authority.
We can't do it alone in the SPD.
She's well aware that Seattle has tried programs like Operation New Day before, such as the 9.5 blocks strategy employed by former Mayor Ed Murray in downtown Seattle in 2015.
And people need to understand that this neighborhood is different.
Lee is thankful for added police presence on 12th and Jackson in Little Saigon, where an open-air drug and stolen goods market thrived during the pandemic. But she wants to make sure Mayor Harrell's public safety efforts are culturally sensitive and comprehensive.
We really need things that will last beyond, his term as mayor. We really need solutions that will really think about how is it going to affect kind of not only this neighborhood, but the city as we move forward.
We need to be doing a lot more.
City Council member Andrew Lewis, whose district includes downtown, says city leaders are listening to Seattle residents and each other.
This is new, this is different. That we have a council and a mayor that are working very closely together.
Lewis, who served on the mayor's public safety transition team back in December, is pushing to continue supporting Just Care, the county and city-funded group that helped clear encampments from Pioneer Square last year by offering people treatment and help, not jail time.
We can't arrest our way out of these issues that are on 3rd Avenue.
Lewis, a former assistant city attorney, says he wants to prosecute those involved in high-level felonies and navigate others into social services.
Certainly there are people on 3rd Avenue who are engaged in really concerning criminal activity that need to be held accountable. But there's also a very large population of people who just are desperately in need of assistance.
I think it all kind of stems from that bus stop.
Rick Yoder, owner of the Wild Ginger restaurant across the street from Gelatiamo, says as the pandemic closed 20 businesses on 3rd Avenue, the many bus stops here became havens for drug use and criminal activity.
If you're going to have these transit-only type situations, the retail environment shouldn't suffer because of that situation. And that's currently our situation now.
As his business continues to scrape by and emerge from COVID-19, he'd like to see a more vibrant 3rd Avenue, as suggested by the Downtown Seattle Association in a 2019 report. And he wants a sustainable collaboration of King County Metro, Seattle Police, and social outreach teams.
We want to stay on this problem because it's a complicated problem and it's going to take complicated solutions and time to figure out. But if we let it go, it'll blow back up in a second.
For now, the 3rd and Pike bus stop has been temporarily shut down, and Yoder and other merchants who've stayed downtown say they're cautiously optimistic for a new day promised by Mayor Bruce Harrell that's still in its dawning stages.
Our attitude is, okay, cool, we see some improvement. How long is it going to last?
And joining us for a further discussion of this issue, we have with us John Scholes. He is the president and CEO of the Downtown Seattle Association. We also have Monisha Harrell. She is senior deputy mayor for the city of Seattle. And finally, Lisa Daugaard, the executive director for the Public Defenders Association. Thank you all for joining me here. And Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell, I want to start with you here and ask about the goals the city has with public safety efforts on 3rd Avenue and Operation New Day as a whole. My question is, how is this going to be different than what the city has done in the past? Because, as we all know, Seattle's 9.5 block strategy in 2015 took a similar approach, calmed things down for a few months, but clearly did not get the intended long-term results. So here we are in 2022. Workers, tourists starting to come back downtown as we emerge from the pandemic. How long will the mayor keep up this added police presence on 3rd Avenue, and what's going to be different this time around?
Yeah, the most important thing with our new strategy is not just the presence of officers and helping to address some of the immediate concerns, but the activation of the space. It's really important to make sure that we are using all of the other city's resources to be able to activate and engage the area so that we have longer term, more sustainable results within this area. You know, we know that with the last 2 years, downtown suffered quite a bit because, you know, largely with office spaces and shopping, that area was abandoned. And so when you have the absence of positive engagements, you know, it leaves the space open for something to fill it. And so we need to ensure that we are continuing to fill that space with positive engagements, positive interactions. That means getting people back to the downtown area, both from a work perspective, as also from a retail perspective, from a tourism perspective, all of those things that we've missed over the last number of years. And so it means involving our Department of Neighborhoods. It means involving our our Office of Economic Development, and making sure that we are putting some positive programming in that place so that it's not just a policing presence in that area.
Got it. Thanks for that. And John, I'll go to you next. You and Lisa were actually on the set with me here at Seattle Channel back in 2015 to discuss the 9.5 block strategy. But I wanted to get your perspective, if I could, on why that plan didn't work and what businesses want to see done differently now with Operation New Day.
Well, I agree with Deputy Mayor Harrell. We have to have a broad and comprehensive and sustained strategy. And I'd say, you know, the conditions and challenges that we see on 3rd Avenue are really not unique to 3rd Avenue. We're seeing these challenges and have seen in other parts of the city, other neighborhoods, whether it's 12th and Jackson or in Ballard or the U District. What's unique about 3rd Avenue is it's prior to the pandemic was the busiest transit corridor in our city, home to our arts and cultural institutions and our artists. It's where we ask people to go exercise their civic duty as jurors or to go testify at City Hall. It's home to lots of low-income housing up and down the corridor and services and shelter. And it plays a really important role. It's in many ways sort of the lobby of our city. Millions of people are going through it each and every year. And so it should be the best street and best experience in the city. In my opinion, it should be welcoming and safe for everybody. And it's not been that way. Although I want to note really significant progress that we've seen over the last 3 weeks. I think the mayor and our city leaders are on the right track here in making it a safer space for everybody. And that's The feedback I've been getting from small business owners and leaders of our arts and cultural institutions, people who live downtown, people who work downtown, everybody wants this street to be a safe and welcoming place for everybody, and for it to be active and those stores to reopen or the empty storefronts to fill in with new small businesses. It first needs to be safe and healthy and welcoming. So I think we need to be really intentional about the interventions that we're bringing here for people in need.
Yeah.
They need a certain intervention to help them off the streets, to get connected to services and housing and shelter. And there's other folks that have been out there hurting other people, and that's a different intervention. We need to hold them accountable for that behavior. There's too many people that shouldn't be carrying around guns that have been carrying around guns, and too often they pull them out and fire at each other. And we've seen a number of those incidents over the last 6 months. But I think in recent weeks, we're on a much better course, and we need to sustain it. We've been here before where we've seen sort of 3 or 4 weeks of police presence and short-term action, and we're back to where we were. We don't want to see that again. I don't think anybody does.
Got it. Lisa, let me go to you next. You've worked with public safety issues in our area for decades here. What's your take on how Operation New Day is rolling out?
Well, I take Operation New Day as a general commitment to a strategy of action that has a number of different fronts and that is going to evolve. I'm really glad to see a new sort of era of partnership. I think that we are well on our way to a common ground approach, and we're going to need that. Making progress on public order and public safety issues in the city, given the stresses and difficulties that we've all experienced for the last few years, is going to require everyone to pull in the same direction. And I do think that we're seeing that framework set. The number one, the strategy that works is an upward spiral type strategy where the conditions on the street are such that ordinary activity can resume, and it does resume, and then that ordinary activity sort of sets an atmosphere so that there's not, it's not the kind of space that folks are going to use for illicit activity. That said, the 3rd and Pike area has been for longer than I have been doing this work, which, as you noted, is a long time. It has always been the locus of illicit economic activity, basically people selling goods in the illegal economy. So I don't think that this is not a new thing, and it is very resistant to flavor of the moment solutions. The good news is we do actually know what works, which is to have all of the entities that cross paths with people who are really struggling conference, share what they know, and make a plan that is actually designed to work for that person's situation, taking into consideration their particular circumstances. So it doesn't do any good to warn people who are really deeply mentally ill to stop being mentally ill in this space. It doesn't do any good to tell people to stop being homeless when they have absolutely no access to shelter. And it doesn't do any good to tell people to stop stealing property and selling it on the sidewalk if they have no legal income strategy. Just to give you an example, one of the people that we're working with right now is someone who immigrated from Vietnam as the child of an American citizen in the 80s and is now under an order of deportation, but Vietnam doesn't accept deportees. So he is stranded here without any ability to work legally. He doesn't have a green card. We need a plan for such people, who are ready to stabilize and take all kinds of constructive steps, but we don't actually have anywhere to point such a person, to explain how they can lawfully have an income stream. So we need to come up with those answers collectively, and I'm hopeful that we will.
Thank you for that. And Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell, I'll go back to you on this one. Maybe I can touch on some of these different points that John was bringing up earlier with regard to intervention, and Lisa too, because I've seen a lot of police activity on 3rd Avenue, but not a lot of visible social service outreach work. So talk to us about the long-term plan to make sure the city is not just arresting people, but getting help to those people who need services for behavioral health or addiction problems. I just remember at the Operation New Day press conference last month, a lot of law enforcement agencies were represented, but not a lot of social service agencies.
Yeah, we do actively engage and always have actively engaged a number of community-based organizations, nonprofits, and others who do this sort of work. LEAD is one of the ones that we actively utilize and engage. When we have homeless encampments downtown, we always send social workers in advance of removal notices, and they'll go by several times with offers of shelter as well as mental health and other physical health supports. And sometimes it may take a few contacts, a few engagements before somebody is able to ready and willing to accept help or services. We just have to keep doing it. That really is the only option. You can't predict when somebody will be ready, but you have to make services available when they are. We definitely do not have the amount of services that we need. We have to work with the county, we have to work with the state to be able to help us get more of those resources. There is a behavioral health facility that is being built in the North Seattle area near Northwest Hospital right now. And we need more of those really across the state, but very specifically in Western Washington and in and around the Seattle area. So we continue to be able to do multiple strategies at one time, and it's going to take a multifaceted approach.
Fair enough. Lisa, let me go to you on this in terms of what you're hearing from Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell. Does this sound viable? I heard LEAD brought up here, which of course involves some assisted diversion for people on the streets there. Is the Public Defender Association going to be involved? Some thoughts on this?
After really quite a few years of impasse, we are seeing active use of LEAD referrals from this area by SPD. So I really want to acknowledge that. In some ways, it's like, a reset where a lot of new officers have never used this tool before, and it's going to take a minute before everyone's fluent. We also have some capacity issues that we will be hurrying to kind of backfill so that we can take what SPD and the community are sending us. So we really appreciate the mayor's office partnership in that, and we're definitely seeing that coming to fruition. The other point I wanted to make is that, one of the major I think lessons learned from the last 2 years is that when we go back to 2019, right before the pandemic, there was a widespread theory that there were a lot of service resistant people out there, and that's what we had to develop public policy solutions for. During the pandemic, we experimented with this approach called Just Care, which the city has really come in as a strong partner on, and again, really appreciate that. Just Care was trying to actually design services to meet the circumstances that people were in. And we found that when we do that, almost everybody does accept and engage. Now, those individuals face really severe challenges, and there are a lot of background systems that need to be improved. But then they're paired with an advocate who can work on that. So the final point is that people have discussed the city attorney's office 118 person list of folks who have had lots of interactions with the criminal legal system and have a big impact on communities, including downtown.
Right, the high utilizers, yeah, which he's talked about.
Right. And I want to give them, full credit. They've made clear that list is both under and over inclusive. It probably includes people who are doing well now, and they'll take them off, and there are other people who need to come on. So it's not like a fixed in time thing. But we did run through that list and found that over half of those folks are people who have been found legally incompetent due to severe mental illness. And so they're not going to, generally speaking, be well served or well addressed going through the court system. So we have to collectively turn to the behavioral health care system, as Deputy Mayor Harrell said, and ensure that there are innovations there that can receive this population. They do have an impact, but the tools that we have aren't a good match. So we need to create new ones.
Got it. Thank you for that. John, I want to make sure that you chime in here, because I think about the different things the DSA has done, like the MID team, the Metropolitan Improvement District ambassadors out there. They clean up areas of downtown, do some outreach. They've been doing that for many, many years. I just want to try to hear your thoughts on what type of outreach works. We heard about Just Care from Lisa here a little while ago. We heard about LEAD from Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell a little while ago. You're talking to businesses out there, and you've seen this activity over the last several years. What type of outreach works?
The outreach that comes with meaningful offers of service and housing. And we know that works. We've seen, as Lisa noted, really incredible accomplishments through the Just Care program in downtown over the last year and a half or so, at City Hall Park, at First and Yesler, at 4th and Pike, and along 3rd Avenue between Pike and Union, where last July there were 35 or so tents propped up along the sidewalk. So the outreach that works is outreach that comes with the services and housing and other support that people need to come inside. And we need to be much more intentional about how that's provided in downtown to meet the needs of roughly 800 or so folks that in the greater downtown that are unsheltered today. And a majority of those folks have been on the street for many, many years. They didn't just, lose their apartment because they weren't able to make their rent check. And a majority of them are dealing with substance use and or mental health issues. So the Partnership for Zero effort, Lisa's work, all of that is critical to our success here to help those that are vulnerable. And we also need to hold accountable those that are hurting others outside. There are people that are causing violence with workers and small business owners, but also a lot of vulnerable people that get caught in the middle of this, that get caught in the middle of the gunfights between individuals that shouldn't have guns in downtown. And so this is, to me, is all about the most appropriate intervention to meaningfully affect the behavior, but also improve the safety and conditions in the neighborhood. We've got to have a broad toolkit, and it needs to be applied consistently.
Yeah. And John, let me stick with you because I want to make sure we cover this piece here. The DSA had talked about recommendations for changing 3rd Avenue a little bit back in 2019, the 3rd Avenue Vision Plan. It's a highly used arterial, as we all know in our city. Your report actually showed before the pandemic, it carried more buses than any other transit street in North America. So what sort of physical environmental changes would potentially be needed that the DSA is talking about? What are you recommending?
Yeah, it is the busiest transit corridor in the city and more buses on it than any street in the country, as you noted. First, it's got to be safe and healthy for everybody, but it also needs to be redesigned. And over the course of 20 years, we've put a lot of buses on that street, but we haven't made other associated improvements that a corridor like that that's carrying a lot of people really deserves. So wider sidewalks, better lighting, more delineated areas for people to wait for the bus, more planting, landscaping. We've put forward several ideas in a vision, building on best practices from other cities around the country and around the world. And we think this is part of the answer. It's not the only answer. Better lighting and landscaping isn't going to help somebody off the streets or deal with gun violence, but it's part of the answer. And we look forward to, talking to the city and the mayor's office and council of how we can revive this vision and move it forward. These are 50,000 people prior to the pandemic getting on and off the bus there every day, 50,000 Seattleites. It should be a great experience for everybody.
Thank you. Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell, I just want to talk about this. Do you think there's a need to change the physical layout of 3rd Avenue? I know there's a lot of concern about that. Also concern from people about if as the activity continues here, you might be pushing things into other neighborhoods or whatever else. Any thoughts about this, redesigning 3rd Avenue?
Regardless of the public safety needs, I'm always open to redesigning an area that could be improved. I would like to see a Seattle that's got a little bit more tree canopy and some more green space, even in our very urban cores. There are ways to do that. We do want to make sure that there is appropriate and proper lighting. When you look at 3rd Avenue, that at the moment, perhaps it's functional, but it could be better. It could be more beautiful. I don't think anybody's going to walk down 3rd Avenue and think we've absolutely arrived. It's functional as a transit corridor, but there's certainly all sorts of, there are ways architecturally in order to make it warmer and more inviting. And I think that we should always be looking at those level of improvements. Seattle is the evergreen city. We're not the cement or concrete city. So there's room.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I would say that, in terms of pushing crime or other incidents into other areas, Seattle as a city is, you know, there's always going to be an element that might shift or move to other areas, and we have to be able to pay attention to what is going on. And that's part of the reason that the mental health supports and behavioral health supports and actual transitional and permanent housing have to be parts of the solution, right? It's the reason that this isn't so easy is because we have to build not just an element, but we have to build an entire system, and we have to strengthen that entire system. There's been a lot of, not only has there been a lot of growth that we've needed to catch up to, there's also been a lot of atrophy over the course of the last few years. So we're not just having to build and build a new system, we're having to recover from where we were. And so, you know, I would love for that to have been a fast and easy solution. It's not. What it takes to be in this part of the game is a tenacity and a willingness to fight through the very, very difficult times as they are right now. And knowing that this, you know, when they say it's a marathon and it's not a sprint, well, this is a very fast marathon. This is a marathon amongst Olympic runners. You have to be able to hold the pace for a very, very long time. And that's why sustainability becomes the most important element of it. You can't have a fireworks show and then it burns out and then there's nothing left. We have to be willing to put on a very long campaign, and we have to have the people in place to do it sustainably over an extended period of time. And we have to have the systems that can support that.
Thank you for that. We need to wrap up the show here, Senior Deputy Mayor, and I really appreciate that. Lisa and I'm going to try to do the 30-second version if I can with you. Operation New Day, do you think it's going to be successful? How's it going to get there?
Well, if it follows the path laid out in Deputy Mayor Harrell's last comment, yes, very promising new framework. So just amen to everything she just said.
All right. Well, thank you for that. John, some final thoughts on Operation New Day. I do need to keep it short. Where do you see it going? Where does this plan need to go from your perspective?
Yeah, I think failure is not an option here. There's a lot at stake in getting the heart of our city going again. And for our city to recover, our downtown's got to be healthy. And this is a part of town that so many people pass through. So I don't think we have a choice. I think the mayor and Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell are on the absolutely right track here. We need a comprehensive and sustained strategy, and we're off to a great start.
Got it. And Senior Deputy Mayor Harrell, I'll let you wrap up. A few businesses I've talked to on 3rd Avenue say they're cautiously optimistic here. Let's talk about next step. I can give you about 30 seconds.
Yeah. The next step is to continue working together, to continue to reach everybody that can have a part in this, and to not exclude anybody, even if we haven't always seen eye to eye in the past. We have to bring everybody to the table, and that means business. That means our CBOs. That is absolutely everybody. Seattle only works when we're working together, and so we have to take the last 2 years, push those aside, and say now is the time to rejoin efforts together.
Got it. Thank you very much, all of you, for this, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media about downtown Seattle and public safety? One person writes, "I love my city, but downtown Seattle has regressed into a cesspool of crime and drug abuse. It's past time we demand accountability from our elected officials." Another group says, "Restoring downtown Seattle is critical to a regional recovery. Let's get to work resolving homelessness and restoring public safety." We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There's a new effort to decriminalize psychedelic drugs in Washington for their mental health benefits. So, how can magic mushrooms help treat depression? It's a trip towards some answers on the next City Inside Out. I hope you join us.